Can we stop for a second? I want to go over some stuff. Here, I think a bunch of people have figured out that maybe they don't have a proof for it, but I think a bunch of the groups have a sort of a general formula that seems to work for undoing any fixed number of t's, right? And let me, so we know that, in other words, our first thing was if we did what was it? A twist, rotate, twist got us from 0 to 0, right? So in other words, this first twist is the 1. So in other words, if we start with, another way to write this is the way I want to do it. If we start with the number 1, and we do a rotate and a twist to that, we get to 0. Our goal in these senses was to try and get back to 0. And we also noticed, this is, we had last time, if we start with a 2, in other words, if we start with 2 twists, what was the operation that got us back? RT gets you to 0. If we start with 3, in other words, if you do twist, 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 if you somehow get the tangle to 3, what was the operation that got us to 0? That gets us to 0? T, RTT, RTT gets you to 0. If we started with 4, what was it? RTT, RTT. So it's sort of and this isn't a proof of anything, of course, except that we can actually test these things by doing it. We sort of, it looks like we have a nice formula here. What would, if this continues, looks like each time you add 1 here, all you have to do is string on another RTT to undo it, right?
But there are other ways to write these things, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to write them. You want to continue with this, obviously.
Right.
But there are other ways to write. Right.
So if we have the integer n, if you've done n half twists, how would I write? What would be a nice way to write how to get n to 0? RT. And I want to do n minus 1. You know, to get 4, I had to do 3 of them. To get 3, I had to do 2 of them. In other words, whatever number this is, you do 1 fewer RTT combinations to get you to 0. So, in other words, if this formula holds all the way through, then if I start with n, I do an RT, and then I have to do n minus 1 of the RTTs. And so a reasonable way to write that might be RTT, this whole thing, to the n minus 1. Does that make sense?